right back into our lead here over for the Georgia Notre Dame game. Georgia's a 1.5-point favorite. They are 3-0 all time versus Notre Dame. Obviously, the last time these two teams matched up in this building, Georgia pulled out the 17-10 win. Sugar was indeed falling from the sky as Herschel Walker jumped over the goal line to get Georgia that win. What was it? Separated shoulder? I believe it was, as he jumped over that goal line to give Georgia the win. And you look at the history here. I'm just going to read out the last two results following that one touchdown win for Georgia. These have been close games. 20-19 win for Georgia in 2017. 23-17 win for Georgia in 2019. Our guy, Kobe Pierce, was there in the 2019 game. Might have been there, I believe, in the 2017 game. I don't mean to date you too far. Dan was there in attendance. Wild fun fact on that one. These have always been one-score games. But I don't know, coming into this matchup, maybe dating back to 2019, that we've had a Georgia-Notre Dame matchup that is essentially a pick'em game, which is really crazy considering the run Georgia's been on over the last 3 years, because Georgia's won, 2 back-to-back national titles? And what has Notre Dame done? Maybe outside of a couple 10-win seasons? Not much.
I just think it all really comes down to what a good job they're doing with their program on, ground and pound, run the ball, be physical up front. They've always had really good offensive linemen. I think back to the 2017 game, I'm pretty sure that was Mike McGlinchey was one of their tackles that year. I'm pretty sure if you look back, they had a good guard the year we played them again in 19.
Plays for the Cowboys.
Yeah. I can't remember his name, though. It's not Zach Martin, is it?
Yeah.
Was it? I don't think so.
Martin was the same draft class as Johnny Manziel.
Yeah, that was way back. But like you're saying, they've always had some really good. Cole Kmet was on that 2019 team that tight end. He gave us fits that night too in Athens. But they always have guys that to me are a little under the radar coming out of high school. They get them into that program, have them in the weight room doing things the right way, and then they pride themselves in doing some things. So. I think they're going to come out and they're going to try to be physical and attack the edge and run the ball. It's what they did against Indiana. It's what they have done all year when they've had some success. I don't think this is the kind of game for us or for them where if you see your quarterback attempting 30-plus passes, I think you're playing from behind in a big deficit. I think that, you're going to be trying to run the ball as much as you can, trying to control the clock. I think the new clock rule is going to be interesting here of like if you're up by 10, if you're up by 2 scores 14, how often are you just trying to run the ball? I don't know if y'all watched any of the ball games this weekend, but Army had a 21 play 14.5-minute drive that resulted in a touchdown. That would be an ideal way to play a couple of these games.
Kobe, that's the interesting part about this game for me in terms of you talk about both teams up front and being able to run the football. Georgia's historically, obviously, when you think of Georgia, I think most people think about the running backs. You think about Herschel Walker. You think about Todd Gurley. You think about Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, all those guys. Well, Georgia ranks 98th nationally in rushing yards per game. Notre Dame's 10th nationally. Where it gets even more interesting, it's kind of a it's really interesting. So Notre Dame ranks top 10 in rushing. They rank 101st in passing yards per game. Georgia ranks 12th. Granted, the big elephant in the room, Carson Beck will not be the quarterback for this game. I'm really curious to see what does Georgia need to do to win this game? Because you have a first career starting quarterback back there. You'd assume they're going to come out here and throw it 40 times in this game. You'd assume not. Maybe if circumstances change and you got to come back to win, that could happen. But we know, I think we have a good idea of what Notre Dame's going to do, and you can't fault them. Georgia's biggest, kryptonite this year, what's given them trouble, have been mobile quarterbacks. And this guy may not be, Riley Leonard may not be the athlete Jalen Milroe is, maybe not even the athlete Jackson Dart or Haynes King is, but when you look at what those three guys did against Georgia's defense, I have the stat for Jackson Dart. He didn't really run against Georgia that much that game. He picked up just 50 yards. It was really more so what they did through the air that hurt Georgia. I mean, yeah, it's good, but when you compare it to the other two, it's kind of a blip on the radar. Jalen Milroe rushed for 117 yards and 2 touchdowns versus Georgia. And then Haynes King went full Superman, 110 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns against the Georgia defense. I don't know if Leonard will put up those numbers, but I'd argue you probably don't need to win this game. You just need him to, I mean, it's cliche, but if he just picks up a couple third downs or first downs with his legs and extends drives, that's what gives Georgia trouble. Kobe, I'm gonna ask you this because and Dana, you can pitch in here too. When I watched Notre Dame against Indiana, outside of Faison, I don't know if there is a receiver that scares Georgia explosively. I think their most explosive player, and the one that Georgia will no doubt be paying attention to, is Jeremiah Love. But as Dan so eloquently put it last week, Georgia has done really well versus these traditional run teams. It has been these quarterback run teams that have given them trouble. What is your read when you look at Notre Dame's offense?
Yeah, I think, like you're saying, a mobile quarterback just makes you account for one more player. And when you're playing against top tier, receivers, running backs, tight ends, having the quarterback being a threat just kind of limits the coverages and the packages you can run out there in order to cover him. I think that's what makes Jalen Walker, somebody that deserved to win the award he won in the Butkus, is because, yes, he's not your traditional middle linebacker in the sense of he's in there making a tackle every play, has 100 tackles on the season. But the fact that he can play the outside, play the inside, play the quarterback spy, and has the speed to keep up with a variety of quarterbacks and ability to diagnose plays and make spill plays to where his help is, just makes him very valuable in a game like this, because I don't think, unlike the Alabama game where Milroe is probably a little bit faster than Walker, I don't think one-on-one in space Leonard's going to be a lot faster. He may be a little bigger, but honestly, help's coming. All you really have to do is slow him down, even trip him up, and kind of get some help there. I was just looking back at talking about just some statistics from that 2017 game, just thinking about not wanting to throw the ball a lot. In that game, you had Fromm attempted 29 passes. He only completed 16 of them for an average of 4.9 yards per reception. He had 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Ran the ball for 185 on the ground that game. But I don't think that's the kind of game we're going to have. I think odds are Gunner's going to have a little bit better statistics than that. But like you're saying, you're definitely going to lean on a run game. And, Kirby, their MO has been limit the run of another team and then make them beat you throwing the ball. And I just don't know if we limit the run like we did against Texas to less than 2 yards per carry by running backs. I'm just not sure that there's a lot of teams that can throw the ball over our heads consistently. Not on our side of the bracket anyways. How about that?
Well, I think the one thing that Georgia does extremely well is stop the run. They've always been able to do that under Kirby. We may not have the exact same personnel, but this game reminds me so much of the game against Michigan, where Michigan had this just otherworldly rushing attack and that they were going to run it all over us, and there was no chance that Georgia could stop them. And, oh, my gosh, Michigan is just going to run it down your throat, blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, first of all, this Notre Dame team is not even as good as that Michigan team was. Now, at the same time, this Georgia defense is not as good as it was that same year as well. And, I've had I had a conversation with one of my good friends the other day, and I'll admit that this is probably one of the worst Georgia teams we've had in the last 4 or 5 years. It's not as good as the other ones, but the one thing this Georgia team can do is stop the run, especially if you're a traditional run. And if you watch Notre Dame a lot, they really don't feature their quarterback as a running quarterback the same way that Georgia Tech did. They're not like an option-based team where their quarterback is running it every third or fourth attempt. So they want to run the ball traditionally. But Georgia has the ability to stop the run. And like you said, being able to stop Texas running the football, I think, is harder to do than stopping Notre Dame running the football. And, if you want to tell me that Notre Dame is better than Texas, I don't really want to hear that argument. I don't believe that for a second. Could Georgia lose this game? Absolutely, Georgia could lose this game. Sure. There's two football teams that are going to show up and they're going to play football. The ball is not round. It bounces different ways. Things can happen. But I want to go all the way back to a long time ago when Harrison said that, Georgia can't throw the ball or may not want to throw the ball because they have Gunnar Stockton in. He's a new quarterback. Gunnar Stockton has been in the program for quite a while. Gunnar Stockton is an established quarterback. And, he's not just some guy. He's not a walk-on or, a guy who just gets added to a roster. He's a 5-star quarterback. He's been in the program for, if I believe this is his 3rd year in the program. He's been the scout team quarterback. He's thrown. He's done all these different things. I don't think there's going to be any hesitation. And if you need any proof to that, go see what Nick Saban said this week. Nick Saban was on Pat McAfee's show, and they were talking about the transition. And he said, go look at the first drive when Gunnar Stockton came in. And Nick Saban, verbatim, they didn't change a damn thing. That's exactly what Nick Saban said. They didn't change a damn thing. There was zero hesitation to let this kid run their offense, and they did it with success. So for all of those people who are wanting to say that Georgia can't be the same team with Gunnar Stockton, I will take you straight to Nick Saban's mouth. They didn't change a damn thing. So if you're expecting to see something dramatically different, I think you're wrong. I think Bobo has a lot of faith in Gunnar Stockton, and that was the point that I wanted to make earlier before we moved on to the run defense. But I think Gunnar Stockton is going to have all the faith in the world of this offensive staff to let him run our offense.
I think the point that is worth making, and not that y'all don't remember this, but there might be others. Mike Bobo was the coordinator at South Carolina when Stockton committed to South Carolina. Like Stockton came over to Georgia after Bobo was hired at Georgia. That was a big part of his recruitment, a big part of why he committed to Georgia. So this is a Bobo guy. Like, this is as close as you'll get to like a hand-picked quarterback over there for Mike Bobo as Dan chows down over there on his blizzard.
It's gone.
Kobe, you made this point. Talk to me about it, because I'm dying to see some quarterback counter back in this offense.
Yeah, that's exactly what I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be like any young quarterback. Dan will tell you, what do you do to make life easier? What do you do if you're an Ohio State, offense that has a mobile quarterback? You roll him out of the pocket, you reset the pocket somewhere else, and you make him read half the field. It's the oldest trick in the book, right? You don't sit there in the middle of the field and make him read from right to left and read a wide field with a bunch of DBs watching his eyes. You let him roll out and you throw it. He's got, a lot of levels. He's got one guy coming kind of close to the line of scrimmage on like a close level, and he's got one guy breaking deep. That's it. And if neither of them are there, you just run and you go get your 4 yards and you come back and you do it again. I think that's going to be something you're going to see a lot. You're going to see him outside of the pocket with Oscar Delp or, Jurasic, running in front of his eyes. And then you're going to see an Arian Smith or a Dom Lovett running at like the 15 to 20 yard mark. And at that point, he's going to have 2 options, and the third option is going to be for him to keep it. And then, of course, obviously, we're going to see him drop back in the pocket. You're going to have to. And then you're going to try to start the run. You're going to see true quarterback read. You saw that in the SEC championship game where he actually has a chance to keep the read. He actually is reading the defensive end. I think that's going to help a lot in your run game. I think that's always been such a peculiar call for me when you have a non-mobile quarterback, that you run the shotgun, running back right beside you, true, stick it in their gut read play, when, 9 times out of 10, it's always a give, because if you let the quarterback keep it, he just isn't going to have the ability to make the same plays.
And, that's one of the things you talk about. You said with a young quarterback, a lot of times it's a one-read system, right? So, first of all, it's half the field and it's one read. You have this safety right here. If he comes down, we're going over the top. If he stays back, we're going to go underneath. And that's what they did with Justin Fields at Ohio State. That's why a lot of people didn't think that Ohio State quarterbacks could have success in the NFL, is because Ohio State's a one-read system where you're reading one particular guy. You'll have multiple routes into one zone, and you're reading one guy. If you take this away, we're going to go here. If you're going to take that away, we're going to go here. I don't expect to see that with Gunner. I honestly don't. I think he is a processor. I think he's able to make decisions. One of my biggest critiques out of him coming out of high school was that whenever the talent was equal or greater than, he didn't have a lot of success. But part of that reason, and if I go back and I'm objective about it, is he was trying to do too much on his own. I think in this Georgia system with all the talent around him, and I think that this is one of those lessons that you learn by taking mental reps, is that Carson Beck has already tried to do that this year. I think that visual was there for everyone to see, that with this Georgia football team, you can be ultra successful just doing what they ask you to do. Nothing more, nothing less. Just execute. And I think Gunner is more than capable. And I know it's a nasty term in quarterback play as a game manager, right? But there is a lot of benefit to being a game manager. Just do what we're asking you to do. Make these simple reads, make these simple decisions. Like you put in there, Harrison, you never go broke taking a profit, right? Well, I think that was one of the biggest mistakes that we saw earlier in the season, was that Carson was trying to do too much. I think the success that we saw Carson have later in the year was him just doing what he was supposed to do, right? Not forcing it.
Yeah, I mean, you look at, they talk about, when you see people talk about the Georgia Tech game and kind of Georgia's resurgence the second half, there's 4 throws that I saw. They were all checkdowns. And they're like, man, Carson hit these checkdowns, and no, they didn't go for 50, 20, 60 yards. They went for, maybe 7 to 10 yards. They got a first down, kept a drive alive. And those were what analysts were saying. Hey, these are some of the most impactful plays that he maybe overlooked when he tried to go for that circus throw that he tried to force it in, at Florida to London Humphreys and gets picked off. That was something maybe he overlooked in the past. Exceptional point there. Kobe, you had a point you wanted to add in right there.
Yeah, just the fact that I hate that the term game manager has become a negative term. It was such a positive term for a quarterback for so long. Like, why would you not want to have someone who manages the game, the pace of your offense well? And now it's just become such a this negative, like, your quarterback's unathletic. All he can do is throw the ball, and just not my favorite new term with a twist, I guess.
And we agree on that.
Yeah. It's funny because you look at, so obviously I think Jake Fromm was the quarterback that was synonymous with the term, the negativity of that term. Then you go to Stetson Bennett, and Stetson Bennett's at Georgia. Everyone's trying to take away from Stetson Bennett. Oh, it's the defense. He's just a game manager. He's just keeping the wheels on the road. Now Stetson's gone, and everyone's saying, oh, y'all don't have Stetson Bennett anymore. I'm like, we make up our mind around here.
If you ever watched Stetson play one freaking down of football and you thought he was a game manager, you're out of your damn mind. That kid thought he was Brett Favre. I mean, he could run the ball like Steve Young, but he thought he was Brett Favre. There was nothing game manager about Stetson Bennett. So whatever on that.
Sometime they had to rein Stetson in a little bit.
Correct. There's nothing manager about that kid.
Sometimes you had to rein Stetson in a little bit. And I think they finally got Beck to start doing the same. Hey, don't try to be Superman. We just need you to play within the offense. And that was the term I think we talked about ad nominem, over and over again. Play within the offense. They have the playmakers. Just get them the ball. Gentlemen, I have some stats here. I did a statistical rundown because I think it's interesting. We've done this before, and we came to the same conclusion. I think Tennessee was the last time when we looked at the stat sheet and we said, man, everything leans Tennessee for the most part. And it's kind of here similarly. Third down, Georgia's better than Notre Dame. Georgia's converting at a 40.9% clip on third down. Notre Dame's 38.3%. They rank 87th. Points per game, Notre Dame, or points per game allowed, Notre Dame's third in the country. Georgia's at 23rd. Rushing yards allowed, Notre Dame ranks 51st. Georgia ranks 36th. Passing yards allowed, Georgia ranks 50th. Notre Dame ranks 3rd. Dan, here's one that I threw in here because this always brings, I think, we have this conversation a lot privately in terms of like, where are the takeaways for Georgia? Georgia has just 8 takeaway interceptions this year. 92nd in the country in interceptions. Notre Dame has 17, which ranks number 4. For the most part, it looks, hey, on paper, Notre Dame's the better team. But our sport's not played on paper, which is why I'm going to weave this in here. you have to take the schedule into consideration because there is
100%.
Indiana, and you go look at, I can send y'all the link for that. If you go look at the spreadsheet of when they were comparing Georgia to a hypothetical matchup versus Indiana, Indiana was ranked higher than Georgia in most of those categories. But look what happened to them when they got into the playoffs and played a team with a pulse. Next, the final game of the night, Georgia versus Notre Dame, a rematch of the 1981 National Championship in the Sugar Bowl. Clayton McGee says Georgia is, and I quote, not man enough to beat Notre Dame. Notre Dame's going to line up and smash them, and they're going to play defense, and Georgia's not man enough to stop it. There's Clayton McGee's pick. I guess I'll go ahead and start this one off. Dan, you haven't been able to go last night, so we'll go ahead and build up the suspense in your pick, if there is any suspense in that one. I think Georgia wins this game, and I simply think it comes down to Kirby Smart's been there. Kirby Smart's done that. We've seen that with when Georgia's played Texas this year. Texas was the hot up-and-comer, top team in college football, according to many, and Georgia went in there and beat them. We talked a lot on the show is Georgia's ability to play when their best is needed has happened. I don't know if we've seen the best of Georgia this year, but if there's any time that we're going to see it, the time is now. I take Georgia to win. I take Georgia to cover. I think Georgia's going to win by a touchdown in this game. I won't go as far to say it's more than a touchdown. Maybe 10 points is kind of my max in terms of this pick. Kobe, what say you?
Yeah, I think that you're right, and it's kind of like Dan said earlier when he talked to his friend Notre Dame. You don't have to be battle tested; you just have to be battle ready. I think we've talked about this Georgia team maybe as battle tested as any Georgia team that I can remember seeing in a long time. And I just think there's something about that in big games where the guy beside you has been there; he will continue to be there for you. I think that when things have gone wrong this season, Georgia's ability to bounce back and bring themselves back, I think you could have laid down and quit against Alabama and you didn't. I think you could have had some things kind of unravel at the hinges after you lose to Ole Miss and it didn't. I think the same thing in this one. I think even if you're down 10-0, 14-0 at some point in this game, I'm not sure I'm going to count us out of it at all. I mean, you're down 17-0 against Georgia Tech, like you're saying, and battle back in that. I think not only will Georgia win this game, I think I'm at, like you're saying, at that 10-point to 14-point mark. I think Kirby's going to go out there and he's going to make a statement to kind of remind everybody that even with a backup quarterback, the machine he's built in Athens is built to win.
Well, Harrison just sent me a stat that Georgia is 4-0 against teams in the CFP this year. I know that's Texas, Clemson, and who's the other one, Harrison?
Tennessee.
That's right. Wow, that's pretty good. Notre Dame, what's their record against teams in the CFP this year?
Just 1-0, and that's just Indiana.
Yeah, well, there you go. Listen, I don't think this is very complicated. I've been wrong before, but if Notre Dame wins this football game, it would be the most wrong I've ever been in my entire life. I just don't see that happening. I think Notre Dame is a good football team. I think Notre Dame's a well-coached football team. I'll give Marcus Freeman has made major adjustments in his coaching from the day he took over at Notre Dame to now. And that's what good coaches are supposed to do. Kirby made horrible choices early in his coaching career, and he's flushed out of his system and become, arguably the best coach in football right now. I think Marcus Freeman's on his way. I think Marcus Freeman is doing the right things at Notre Dame. I just don't think Marcus Freeman has got this team ready to play right now. They're going to want to be ready to play. They're going to put the best plan they got to going together. But the problem is college football, more than any other sport, is about the Jimmies and Joes. The NFL, there's a draft, and they try to make sure that every team is equally talented. College football is not that way. I had a good friend who he's actually an NFL head coach right now, and Harrison knows exactly who I'm talking about. He said The reason I love coaching the NFL is because it's me versus the other coaches who can put the best plans together because the talent's even. He said, I would get extremely bored coaching in college football because if you're Nick Saban or Kirby Smart, you have the talent advantage every single weekend. And he goes, and it's not really about me at all. So Kirby Smart still has the talent advantage. And I think that they're going to put together a game plan that protects their quarterback. And I think that he's going to be successful. And I think this game is going to mirror the 2021 game against Michigan almost to a T. I think it's going to play out almost exactly the same. And I don't remember what the final score of that game was. It like 23-15 or something like that. I mean, it was what do you remember? Anybody know that score?
Was it 34-15 or what was it?
Yeah, it was 34-7 until late, and they scored a late touchdown to make it 15.
34-11. 34-11.
I would not be shocked if the score is similar to that and if the game didn't play out almost identical to that.